Thank you for joining us for 3Bs on the Law podcast, hosted by Trisha Barita, Camille Canali, and Susan Dawson. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, not meant to provide legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Also remember, laws change or they differ by jurisdiction, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal counsel in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 3Bs on the Law podcast. I am very excited to introduce you to who I consider to be a good friend of mine, someone who I've known for years and is my trusted go-to person when it comes to all things unemployment, Carol Gabrielsen. Carol is the founder of Unemployment Consultants. You're going to have to tell us a little bit about your business and how long you've been doing business in Illinois. But I just have to say that you started this business, woman-owned business, long before that was, in my day, kind of a thing. And I'm just so proud to know you. You're such a trailblazer. So tell us a little bit about Unemployment Consultants, Carol.
Well, actually, I started Unemployment Consultants in 1981. Before women were really out there in business. And I remember having to go to the bank and I was going to take a car loan out and they said I had to have a man sign. And I walked out of the bank and said, forget it. And I never took a loan out to start my business because I wasn't going to have anybody sign. So as we all know, many years have passed since then. Women no longer need the assistance to get backing, which is wonderful.
And
my business is designed to help employers save money on their unemployment costs. If you're a taxing entity, you can reduce your payroll taxes by how you handle terminating your employees and processing the unemployment claims and following through. If you're a government entity, a nonprofit, or an educational institution, you can opt out of the taxing program and go to what the state calls a reimbursable program, where you pay dollar for dollar. So our goal is to see that the costs are as low as possible for any type of employer we work with. And I've been doing this in Illinois, and I've worked in 15 different states over the years.
That's amazing. And I love that your brothers work for you.
Yes, they do.
I love it.
It's wonderful.
And I know your brothers both, and they both rave about their sister and how they work for you and it's your company. So anyway, let's move on to some of our unemployment topics, because like I said, you're my go-to here to talk about all issues related to unemployment. So how has unemployment changed during the COVID-19 pandemic?
It has changed tremendously. States have loosened up the laws so that everybody is in pay status. They're paying high school kids, they're paying college kids, they're paying people who have to stay home to care for their children because their children can't go to school, which is all fine and good. However, most states right now are assisting the employers with those costs. January 2nd, the CARES Act expires, and all the financial backing from Washington will be over. That's a dramatic issue for government entities, nonprofits, and educational institutions that are on the reimbursable method of payment. Because until January 2nd, the feds are picking up 50% of their costs. The states are picking up the other 50%, but January 3rd next year, it's 100% on your own unless something changes in the individual state or in Washington. And it's very scary for the employers not knowing what's going to happen.
When you say 100% on your own, do you mean 100% on the state?
They're going to have to pay all these COVID costs by themselves. Right now, they're not doing that. There's relief for all the COVID cases. But starting January 3rd, unless legislation is passed either in each state or federally, the employer will be on the hook for 100%. And to give you an idea, I have a hospital, nonprofit. They usually pay $50,000 a quarter in unemployment costs as a reimbursing employer. Their second quarter bill for April, May, and June was $1.2 million in benefits in 3 months.
Whoa.
Now, if they weren't having the feds there to help them back them out and the state of Illinois to help pay that, they would have had to close.
Yeah.
They're panicking about January 3rd.
That's a good point, Carol. I think that the thing that's going along, at least certainly here in Texas, and I'm sure many other states, is that, it has been a little confusing to watch our unemployment system sort of flip on a dime here and start, giving unemployment out a lot differently than they have for many, many years. Many employers that have, handled their own TWC claims or have worked with consultants, or I call it TWC because they're Texas Workforce Commission, but unemployment claims, have been challenged trying to figure this whole system out. And it seems to be changing, and now we're looking at, okay, now there may be a total other change, which you're talking about in January 2nd, if the federal funds fall away and now there's no funding except for what the employers put in and what they pay for. So I kind of think the employers should pay attention to learning the new system of whatever it is and fighting every claim as much as they can, or at least making sure they make it clear whether someone has a qualifying reason, because I think the qualifying reasons are going to change. But right now, today, what do you think an employer could do if an employee refuses to come back to work? Like, how should they be handling that, at least from your perspective? I know from the Illinois and the other states that you're handling.
Well, in all 3 states, if they refuse to come back to work, it's imperative the employer notifies the unemployment agency immediately. They need to list the job title, the duties, the pay, and the date it was to start. And if the work is comparable to what they did for you before, they should be denied benefits unless they're refusing it because of fear of COVID. They're very sympathetic to that, or because they have children at home that aren't going to school. The states are paying out now. So we already had a conversation here in Illinois that we're going to have to get rid of some of these federal bills effective January 3rd next year. And some kids may still be home at school.
Are you seeing
what
payment?
Are we going to do? But it shouldn't be picked up by the employer 100%.
Carol, did you say you're seeing payments for fear of COVID?
Pardon me?
You're saying that you're seeing unemployment claims being paid for employees having the fear of COVID? Because I know Texas isn't doing that. I don't think.
Illinois is, and so is Wisconsin. Wisconsin puts them on the federal plan. A lot of times you might not be on the plan that's going towards the employer's account, but it's under the federal unemployment plan, one of the programs in the CARES Act, but they're still getting the benefits.
So, anyone can say they have a fear of COVID and then they get paid for unemployment, is what you're saying in
Illinois. That's all they have to do in Wisconsin. Or they are living or care for someone who has a compromised health situation. That they can stay at home.
Right. There's a difference between, from an employer perspective, right? So the importance of any listeners, podcast listeners, to go into whether or not they have to allow someone or pay someone Family First Coronavirus Act, FFCRA, leave because of a fear, which we know under the guidelines, the Department of Labor guidelines and the ACT guidelines, that fear is not enough to get FFCRA leave.
Right.
And an individual, so an employer might say, I'm not going to pay you, we're letting you go because you won't go back to work, or job abandonment. And then they file for unemployment. And in Illinois and other states, we're not the only state that's doing this. They have kind of, I don't know, I've heard it referenced this way, Carol, you can tell me if it's not, but there's like a hazard element or whatever. They put it under, you're not getting dinged as an employer for the claim, but the employee is still getting unemployment.
Exactly.
So that's a state by state issue. So
it's a state by state.
As we know, the Family First Coronavirus Act, federal, impacts all the states. That's how employers make decisions as to whether or not someone's eligible for paid leave or they could be let go for failure to work. Totally separate in Illinois from unemployment.
That's interesting.
And in Illinois,
isn't everybody afraid of getting COVID-19? So, I mean, that's
you
pretty
know,
interesting.
and that's why, you know, states are so different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my Illinois employers that I represent, they're used to this kind of stuff. Your Texas employers, someone wants to open up an office in Illinois, they'd be shocked by this kind of behavior, right? So,
I mean,
but that's Illinois for you.
They're already shocked with what Texas has already did. They did give 6 reasons, and on those were, you know, the age, and then, you know, people having COVID, people, you know, caring for COVID. It was, you know, they did give their reasons that the governor came out with and the Texas Workforce Commission, but the fear of COVID was not on that list. I would have noticed that one, and I think that's very interesting. I mean, so just moving on, if an employee has to be, let's say, completely laid off, do they have to be completely laid off to qualify in your experience? In Texas, I know we allow for them being, if they get reduced down to part-time, that they can apply for unemployment here.
Yes, most states you can apply for unemployment if your wages have been reduced. And if you earn less than what your unemployment weekly benefit amount is, you'll either collect full benefits or partial benefits based on the state law. Once you earn over your weekly benefit amount, then usually you collect nothing.
How about, you know, that's interesting. A lot of employers don't realize that, that you can reduce someone to part-time and they get unemployment. But I think the real pressing issue that we're having right now is what happens when employees if a lot of employers are claiming fraud, right? And Trisha, you've brought this up previously. Carol, I'm sure you've been seeing it. You know, between Texas and Illinois, can you two talk a little bit to me about what's happening, how are fraud claims being addressed?
Well, fraud claims have gone rapid in all states. I've read it in about all 50 states. My tiny office, I used to do 400 claims a week. We're now doing about 2,500 claims a week. Our highest was 5,000 a week. Wow. But even though we're doing 2,500 claims, we're seeing 10 to 12 fraud claims per day.
Wow.
Just in Illinois. Yes. And I don't know who got this, but they're not going after the low wage earners. They're not going after the employees at a company that are making $15 an hour. They're going after the supervisors and executives. So wherever they got this list from, they went after the high wage earners. I haven't had many fraud claims where somebody earned less than $75,000 a year. They're all that and over.
And the fraud you're talking about is somebody using somebody else's social security number to claim unemployment, right?
Right. And the worst part is the first thing you have to do is notify your banks and credit cards and the credit bureaus, file a police report. But what most people don't even think about is notifying the IRS. Because if checks are written under my social security number, the IRS is going to find out next year that I was paid unemployment. And if I don't report it, my tax return is going to be bounced out. Because the IRS gets a listing from all 50 states in a W-2 of who they paid unemployment to. And that employee might not even know that because the W-2 is probably going to some other phony address. So once you know your identity has been stolen, get to the IRS as well as all the other steps. And each state on their website now has a place for you to go and report the fraud.
Oh. Carol, can I actually switch just from that kind of fraud, which is very interesting and probably a huge problem running rampant, and then it's just only going to increase, right, with all the economic issues everyone's having. But we're seeing a different kind of fraud issue, and I kind of wondered your thoughts on this, where the fraud department talks about specifically when people make statements at all to our Texas Workforce Commission that aren't truthful about the reasons that they need unemployment, and say the employees, because we actually have employees that are actually still working and getting unemployment, you know, because it's reduced wages or something like that. Or they got furloughed and they got unemployment and then they came back and there was some overlap with the wages And Texas is now going back and starting to investigate, wait a minute, you earned money and then you took unemployment and there's an overlap. What happened here? I'm very, concerned that employers getting involved with those investigations and sort of saying the wrong thing to help the employee out. You know what I mean? Like you're stepping into potential liability and the civil penalties here, criminal penalties. Like if there's some sort of misrepresentation made by the employer to the Unemployment Claims Commission, that can get the employer in trouble, right?
Yeah, it can get either side in trouble, depending what is said. And for the claimant side, for each week of fraud, usually you have to give up 2 to 4 weeks of your benefits over and above that. Employers, they send you fees. They bill you for your fraud. So every state has a different area looking at it. Each state has requirements for the employees to certify. And when you certify, you have to tell them they're back at work. Employers get claims and they get phone calls from the state and they get paperwork from the state. And it's important you fill it out, because if you don't fill it out and then something's wrong, they can come after and thinking you were trying to avoid it or trying to hide something.
Yeah, I think right now with everybody, all of the craziness going on with unemployment, let's face it, all these people working for these state agencies have just been really overwhelmed. I mean, my heart goes out to them trying to deal with what they've probably seen in their entire careers, the most amount of claims ever. They're not even, at some points, throughout the last 4 or 5 months, they hadn't even answered the phone here in Texas because it was just too much. But trying to deal with all these claims, now they're trying to sort it out because there's a lot of money that was given out that they want to recoup. And so I think employers do have to be thoughtful about, remember that every time you do make a statement to a state agency or a federal agency related to unemployment, that those are considered very serious statements and they could appear to be misrepresentation. Even if in your head, an employer's thinking, I'm helping the employees out, you still can't be dishonest with those agencies, right, Carol?
They shouldn't be working with the claimants. You always have two sides in a courtroom. You have an employer side, a plaintiff side. Same thing with unemployment. So the best thing you can do is tell your employees to go back to the unemployment office. And if the unemployment office has a question, have the unemployment office call me and I will give them whatever data they need. Because when you give information to the employee, they don't always understand what you're saying, or they could misuse that information and use it against you. So you don't deal with the employee on unemployment issues. Tell them to have the state of, the unemployment office call the employer directly. Then you give the honest facts to them.
Agreed.
Yeah. So just one last quick question. I know there a few weeks ago, maybe last month, there was an executive order that came down from the president that talked about an additional unemployment benefit that was coming partially from the federal government, partially from the state. Could you let everyone know where that is currently?
Well, in Texas and in Illinois, the benefits started on July 26th and ended August 29th. 5 weeks is all it lasted. And in California, it started on, California and Illinois were from the end of July to August 29th. California started August 1st and ended September 5th, the same amount of weeks. It was, there are so many people unemployed, it only lasted 5 weeks in every state.
So the state's right out of money with the state component?
Well, none of those 3 states put in a state component. Illinois, Texas, or California. That was an option. They could have put $100 in and make it $400. A lot of states chose not to do that. They didn't have the money. A lot of states are already trying to help the employers with their regular costs. So they didn't have the money to put it in. So they got $300 in each of those 3 states for 5 weeks, and it's done.
Wow. Well, so Carol, if people want to reach out to you or ask you more questions about unemployment, especially in the Midwest, how can somebody reach you?
They can reach me through our website at unemploymentconsultantsinc.com or 670-0590 in Arlington Heights, Illinois. And we'd be happy to talk to anyone about
Which is also
unemployment.
where my firm is now. We've moved to Arlington finally. So, yeah.
I noticed. Yes.
We're finally in the same town. Well, anyway, thank you, Carol, so much for joining us. I can't wait until you and I can get together again. We used to get together frequently.
I know.
And meet, downtown for a cocktail after work, but now we can't. But it'll happen again.
I'm just going away with the NABO convention every year.
Yeah, NABO convention is next week, but it's all virtual. Yeah. So anyway, but it's so good to see you, Carol. Thanks for coming on and talking to us all things unemployment.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Great to talk to you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of 3Bs on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at 3THREEBsonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.